What did I find? Well, I think we found that there's a lot to like about Springfield, Illinois, and I certainly think that we found that the good news is that there's hope for downtown Springfield. You're not dead yet. So I think that the team is going to make some really pretty solid action recommendations, as well as some that will take a little more time. But we tried to put together some ideas that you could, address immediately, and then some that you could think about, for the future. Obviously, there are some challenges to be overcome. I would never try to sugarcoat what the situation is here with the loss of jobs and the dire straits of government funding for both the state and the city, at this point. But the good news is that there are tools that are available, and the population is very resilient. And I think that there's some strategies we've got out there that you'll be able to really make a difference in your downtown within the next 3 years.
What are some of these strategies, like legislation, ordinances, things along those lines, or just overall work?
I don't know whether they're specific to legislation or ordinances. I mean, some of them have to do with making the city more bike friendly. A lot of it has to do with sort of presenting a situation of reality about what your capacity is for housing and for business, and sort of letting you know exactly what those things can look like. I think we'll probably talk a little bit about making connections between places and hopefully defining what those connections are. Went back through the RUDAT report from 2002, and while a lot has been accomplished from the RUDAT, there's still some things in that report that we need to address again, particularly regarding connections in the different areas. I think we looked at a way of helping you better define the areas of your downtown to make addressing issues within those areas more manageable for you, so it's not so overwhelming.
So the connecting, is it like, are you talking specifically historic sites or just?
I think it's about connecting places, and whether those are connections by visual means, by transportation means, by alternate transportation means, by use, by banners, by street decor. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but it's about focusing on saying, how do I get from place A to place B without really seeing a difference, but knowing by the time I'm in place B, I'm in a different place. And that's part of what connections are all about, that have their own identity. And so that, an example, I'm not going to use one in Springfield, but then I'm using one in Oklahoma City, is people don't walk very much in Oklahoma either, and we want them to walk more. And so I am looking at strategically placing between like the core of where the downtown hotels are and where the National Memorial is, which is another high visitor spot, a couple of public art pieces. Now, do I have these yet? No. But, am I looking at that because it gives them stops along the way, and by the time they get to the memorial, they don't realize that they've walked 5.5 blocks, okay? If you make those kind of connections, then you really start to work on people walking more, biking more, not using their car more, whereas if someone said, how far to the memorial, and you said 5.5 blocks, they go, yeah, I'm not walking that, But if we said, but there's this great light cube sculpture over here right across the street in this park, and you got to stop and see it, and then you do that and you realize, well, I'm only 2 blocks from the memorial now, so I'll just walk on over there. And I think those are the types of connections that you need to make for walking. But obviously there can be different kind of connections from the downtown up to Lincoln Park. That may not be a walkable distance, but it's certainly a bikeable distance. So, I think that those types of things will be important, and the team will have some ideas for that.
Are you folks taking any position on the rail consolidation issue?
No, that's going to happen. Something's going to happen on that regardless of what we say or don't say about the railroad. They're not going to be influenced by any. We decided it would be kind of a waste of our time to try to get into that one, because the railroad is going to do what the railroad is going to do.
So what message do you have for people who are going to be here tonight? Where do you want this to go from here, and what's next? Is there a time frame, and what players locally need to step up in order to see what you hope to see accomplished?
Well, I don't know that there's a time frame. We hope that they would be able to get started right away and build on the momentum, and I think that this evening and subsequent things have been planned, and the whole timing of this program from the preliminary visit, from the application going backward, have been designed to build momentum so that you want to keep going. I think that my specific message, without and it will be in the program tonight, is that you need to learn to not rely so much on government. You really need to learn to develop your private sector investment and look at ways that the private sector can invest in downtown Springfield. That you've got to make sure that everyone feel that you educate your community that the better downtown Springfield is, the better it is for MacArthur Boulevard, the better it is for East Springfield. I mean, this doesn't all happen at once, but it's about looking at and selling those messages, and that we have to do it ourselves, and we can no longer depend on just this state or the city government. And I would tell city government to be strong. They're in a very unenviable position of being surrounded by having their two major employers be the state of Illinois, and then in the medical district. Both are institutionalized types of organizations that are very, very powerful, sometimes leaving the city government itself feeling very relatively powerless. I would say claim your power, step up and be strong, and play on the level playing field with those guys and build those partnerships so that you can do more.
Are these recommendations more for people living downtown, or are you looking at tourism potential?
There is tourism. We're addressing tourism issues, and so, I mean, I think the recommendations are for everyone in the community, but for the leadership, I'm assuming that there's going to be some group that we're going to hand this report off to that's going to take a look at an implementation schedule. And I can tell you that if it's Lisa Stott, it'll be done by next week. But that they will continue to monitor progress on getting some of the short-term things done. And while you're doing those little things incrementally in the short term, you're thinking about the big picture.
Any dollar signs on any of the things you've recommended?
No. But we tried to do some things that, I mean, I don't have we don't really always have time to
Of course not, yeah.
to put pen to paper. I think Eve's done some analyses, but it's just they're dollar signs for some projects, but not for the recommendations themselves. But we have been trying to be very conscious of the fact that there's just not a pot of money sitting over there you're asking us to tell you how to spend.
Right.
So,
can you give us any sort of perspective as to how bad off we are, or maybe how well off we are in terms of other cities you've seen?
Well, I think you're a city of 117,000 people and a metro area of 200,000. You really are a regional magnet, and you don't have a lot of competition from immediately outside the Springfield area. So there's a lot of room in the market for you to grow your market position there. I think that there's some advantages and disadvantages. As every community is different. Learning how to work with your major employers to your advantage to get the private sector behind what you do is going to be a huge challenge for you, but you have the opportunity to do that. Some communities don't have that. So it's not always about being being the biggest or the smallest or what have you that breeds success. It's how committed are you to going and making it happen. And sometimes that's just sitting there and figuring out, how are we going to make this happen? The state doesn't have any money. The county doesn't have any money. The city doesn't have any money. Okay, but how are we going to make it happen? We don't stop there by saying those funding sources are not available. What are some other tools that we can have? How do we do this?
What are some of the things that you heard Monday that would be implemented in this plan?
I don't know specifically right now. I'm sorry. I'm just not recalling.
What then, you talk about short-term and long-term, what would you hope that the city government accomplish in the short term, and then in the long term, I'm talking project-wise? Is it construction? Is it getting retail back in the downtown? What?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to be in messaging. At this point, it's those types of things are going to be the result of some of those small incremental steps that you will take in the interim. And I think that, at least from my perspective, it will be about developing that message-based, organizing, building those relationships, and putting those partnerships together so that you can start doing some of those things. There may be some other more physical-based project in some of the team members' things, but I also don't want to undercut their presentation, with this. So
So it comes down to selling the downtown then?
a lot,
Publicity?
exactly. Well, it's different than publicity. I mean, it's about messaging and selling the downtown and letting, it's what we did here is that there's contingent of people, and this is not that unusual in other places, that that wonder why all the money's being spent in downtown. Downtown Springfield sucks, and downtown Springfield, it's dead. Why are we investing anything there? And et cetera, et cetera. Well, the messaging has to be, downtown Springfield's reinvestment in downtown Springfield and what happens here is you will benefit from that. You will be impacted there because this is good and this is the heart. Then the outlying areas, the streets, the residents, and everyone else will benefit. And I think, is it time for me? Okay.
And let me just play devil's advocate for those people. This project was $20,000-$30,000, and to come back with talking about selling and publicity from a group of architects is a bit surprising to me.
Well, this is you can ask me those questions after you've heard the presentation, okay? But I think that also you need to realize that the cost of this project included no public dollars. And I think that kind of messaging, that the implications that kind of messaging brings implies that the public sector invested in this and this is what they're getting back, and that's simply not true. And so, and there's
People
not.
donated private money too.
They did, but that's private money. That was their choice to donate it. So it's a whole different deal. And the city applied for this AIA grant, which funded the bulk of it through the American Institute of Architects. And it's not just a group of architects. You need to realize that this is a 7-member team, and I think that only 2 of them are practicing architects. One has some architectural training, but we have an economist, we have a transportation specialist, we have a sustainability, engineering type of person on the team. So it's not the beauty of SDAT is it is a multidisciplinary team that brings together people from a lot of varied backgrounds, so you're not just getting things from an architectural perspective. This team has been very, very collaborative in terms of looking over the shoulder of what other people are working on and putting their 2 cents in it from their discipline, so I think you're going to get a really well-rounded feeling from this.
How does this play into a greater region? I know we've got the Sangamon County Regional Development Commission.
Well, I think that one of the good things about having the city county planning offices, with Norm Sims over there, is that then you're sort of joined efforts and you take away some of that zero-sum game of economic development. But I'd have to study that one a little bit more before I could really give you a good answer. And yes, they are now waving at me.